Maggie. All right, Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a million for having me, Chris. Appreciate it a lot.
Yep.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Maggie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you
Just
very
so
much.
everyone knows, Michael and I are seated about 4 feet apart. Both of us have had both of our entire regimen of vaccination, so we're quite comfortable. We are doing a little bit of social distancing, physical spacing, but we're not overly concerned, but we will be considerate of each other as much as we can be during the time that we have with Michael. Michael, well, thank you so much for being there.
Pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Michael Rivkin? What are his beliefs, his core values, and what drives you to do what you do?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to have lived in many Pennsylvania small towns, and they're really, really, really unique.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunities in Carbon County right now and in Jim Thorpe are tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
Needless to say, our economy is very strong.
Yep.
Our tourism is strong. Our business climate is strong.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is it's fragile. And
Okay.
so in a lot of the small towns that we all see, you can have an economic bubble.
Okay.
And for me, I think being a part of the process to keep it sustainable
Yeah.
is really important. There's a couple of things that make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So many tourist towns that we've all visited, frankly, they've gone awry. They've become too touristy, and they forgot about their locals. They forgot where they came from. And one of the things that makes Jim Thorpe so, for lack of a better word, so cool is the mix of people that we have.
Right.
And there's a ton of old chunkers here, and they need to be remembered too,
All right.
because that's part of the fiber.
Right. Well, you talked about diversity in regards to economics, but aren't we at the point in Jim Thorpe in Carbon County where we are potentially, because of concerns with the bubble, overly reliant upon tourism? Or is it just the reality is you got to work with what we really have, and there's not much chance to maybe better balance out our economics?
You absolutely positively have to have a balance. There's a couple of things to remember though, Chris. One, you may remember for Fall Festival 2019, the JTTA spent $300 advertising. Nothing.
Right.
We essentially spent no money to advertise Jim Thorpe, yet we got our butts kicked. We had massive crowds. Having said that, it's not just the crowds that come and contribute, as we say, spread their fairy dust to the community. So then the Dolan House goes and shops at Jim Thorpe Market, and so on and so forth. All of the other shops that are supporting the tourism, there's a second-tier tourism economy. And that's the local people that make their money from tourism, spending it on shops that may not directly benefit from tourism.
But what about me who lives in Nesquehoning, Michael?
A rising tide hopefully raises all boats.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the goals. You mentioned Number 9 Mine before. Number 9 Mine is a fabulous attraction. And we try to make sure that that's part of any marketing that we do in Jim Thorpe.
Right.
The goal is that when you're coming through Nesquehoning or Lansford or Lehighton, you're going to stop and have a cupcake from Blended Bakery, or put gas in the car, or stop at the market and share that fairy dust.
Would you agree with the statement that boats that rise with the tide, each boat is more heavily or less burdened than the other based upon the amount of weight? So Nesquehoning has a tougher challenge versus maybe another community. It won't raise as fast with the tide. You know,
there's no question about it. Every town's different, and I think it would be really naive to suggest that we don't recognize that some of our neighbors have their challenges.
Right.
As I said, the goal is that our rising tide helps raise their boats.
Them.
There's no guarantee,
right?
But the goal is to help them.
Yeah, no, that's great. And if you're just joining us here on Carbon Matters live streaming, I'm Carbon County Commissioner Chris Lukasevich. Our co-host Maggie on her paintcation down there in Virginia is joining us virtually. And we're here with our special guest, Michael Rivkin, who's the Jim Thorpe candidate for Borough Council. Michael, talk a little bit. I'm looking over your shoulder and I see this honoring our history, building our future. What does it mean? Take that from a phrase, a tagline, and give us a vision.
Absolutely. So that vision is one of the reasons why Jim Thorpe is a great place to live, work, and visit, is because of the history. The architecture, the museums, the attractions, that's all super important. The locals with their stories, super important. It has to be preserved. It has to be managed. That tourism bubble that you mentioned a few minutes ago, if we don't make sure that we have every basic accommodations for visitors, restrooms, public safety is a big one, food, beverage, then the quality of the visitor experience deteriorates, but also the quality of life for the locals. We have to manage that. Traffic, of course, number one thing, traffic. If I had a nickel for everybody who says, I hate tourism, and I go, wait a minute, do you hate tourism or do you hate the traffic? And they go, no, it's the traffic.
Right.
And as you know, we formed a committee about a year ago to work with the JTTA, the Commissioner's Office, the Borough, CCEDC, and PMVB, and we meet monthly because we want to plan rather than react. And it works.
Yeah. Are you seeing anything that's taken place in Jim Thorpe, either in the political realm, so that would be Borough Council, or even the JTTA tourism, that could be potentially applied, modified elsewhere in the county to help them realize some of the benefits of the draw, the magnet that Jim Thorpe is to the county, how they can benefit from it also?
So one of the things with the council is that, to be honest, JTTA has worked really hard over the past 4 or 5 years to work with Borough Council. And by doing so, now council actually is active in what are the events coming up? What can we do to help plan for the events?
Right.
What can we do to help with the permits? So just by making everybody part of that conversation brings a level of success to the event, but also, again, if we can smooth out the traffic for the folks.
Right.
The lesson there is that, again, by working together, I know it sounds corny, but the fact of the matter is, by all our agencies working together as we have been, we've made real progress. We've done some really great things, and other towns can do it too. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, interesting. Talking about kind of the interrelatedness of our communities and tourism, which again, that is the bulwark of what attracts people here. When we were having the conversation with the Humphreys about Jim Thorpe Trolley and how it's not just about Jim Thorpe, but it's running it out to Mock Chunk Lake Park, Summit Hill, coming up, going down into Lansford, coming through Nesquehoning, going up to Penn's Peak into Penn Forest Township. It's about bringing everyone in and gaining benefit from the blessing that we have from the tourism.
And one of our thoughts on that is that people aren't coming to Jim Thorpe just for Jim Thorpe.
Yeah.
They're going out to the mine, and they're going up to Eckley.
Right.
They're doing a lot of art. They're going out to the theater at Mahoning. I mean, these are things people do, and that's all part of that basket that we try to keep filled, that we try to use to attract people.
Right. So if you're just joining us, this is Carbon Matters live streaming. I'm Chris Lukasevich, Carbon County Commissioner. I'm joined virtually by my co-host, Maggie, who's down on the beach. And we have our special guest, Jim Thorpe Borough candidate, Michael Rivkin. Maggie.
There's a question. Kathy Rooney says, tourism brings the traffic, though. I think locals would be more pro-tourism if it benefited them, like through lower taxes, but it doesn't. So locals are anti-tourism.
Well, the truth of the matter is, Maggie, it does, because when we're talking about having tourists have restrooms, public safety, hopefully to improve the traffic in Jim Thorpe, a lot of that funding comes actually from the 3% money that's collected by the county and distributed by PMVB. That 3% money paid for to assist the JTTA with parking out at Mock Chunk Lake Park. It's paid for traffic traffic control in Jim Thorpe. But more importantly, there's also additional funding that's used for events throughout the county. So it doesn't just benefit Jim Thorpe. PMVB is a 4-county organization, and they spread the money through county by county.
And Kathy, I'll give you probably 2 examples. Michael did mention the hotel tax. The hotel tax pays for about a third of Mock Chunk Lake Park's operating expenses. Just that. Then in addition to that, the county takes in about $500,000 a year in parking revenue. And 90+% of that, probably 95% of those dollars are tourism revenue. You take that $500,000 of revenue, that's about a third of a mill. That's a third of a mill of taxes that were not being billed at this time as county residents. We have a 12.25 mil county tax rate. So we are seeing the benefit. We just might not be doing a good job of educating people to that.
Well, and the other thing is, with the tourism dollars, when they come to the community, like I mentioned earlier, the goal is to try to spread them out. But the other thing is, when we do things like the restrooms and things like that, the whole goal in mind is not to raise taxes.
Right.
You can't go to a local that's been here for 50 years and go, we're going to raise your taxes so we can put restrooms at the train station. Not a good idea.
Right. No, absolutely. So let's go ahead. Michael, what was the encouragement to run for office? You seem to be already really involved. You have a lot to do. JTTA, Pennsylvania Restaurant Lodging Association. You run a small business. You know, you run a what would we call a short-term rental, or what's the term that you use?
Bed and breakfast.
Golan House.
Bed and
Okay,
breakfast.
bed and
That's right.
breakfast. Okay, so tell us about your encouragement. What's encouraging you?
Good question. So I'm really blessed, Chris, in that I've traveled a lot. I've been fortunate enough. I had international hospitality clients, so I was in about 65 countries in the past 20 odd years. All of them are tourist driven. That's what I did. And so many of the issues that we have here, we've seen. They're not new. Same story, different day. You go to the island, to the Canary Islands. They're trying to deal with parking. You go to, my God, Venice, dealing with the crowds. And so there's none of the issues that we have are new. And hopefully by having seen what works in other communities, it may be able to help us with our challenges here.
Right. And you believe you're able to bring that into the conversation within Borough Council?
I do. I do. My strongest belief is working together.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, I've been before Borough Council many times, sat on some committees, tried working with some of the council people, and like I mentioned, we get stuff done.
Right. Yeah. So if you're just joining us, this is Carbon County Commissioner Chris Lukasevich. I'm joined by my co-host virtually, Maggie, and we're with Michael Rivkin, candidate for Jim Thorpe Borough Council. And I would ask those who are tuned in right now, if you have a comment or a question, just go ahead, put it in the chat. Maggie will raise that question for Michael. And at the same time, if you're on Facebook at this moment and you have groups, you have friends you'd like to share this with, go ahead and share this live streaming feed. Let's get it out there. Let's share the wealth of information, the conversation we're having with as many people as possible. Go ahead, Megs.
May I add, if you're going to make a comment or ask a question, let it be about this race with the Jim Thorpe Borough, just because that we have Michael here. This is a great opportunity to be able to ask him any question, to see where he stands on different topics. Let's not be talking about county stuff necessarily.
Right. Yeah. Unless it's interrelated. And likewise, if you're from one of the other 22 municipalities that isn't Jim Thorpe, but you have a question that might be applicable to the situation in Jim Thorpe, or something you experienced in your municipality that Michael should be aware of, please go ahead and put that in there. But again, we are going to try to stick to this particular area, which is the Borough of Jim Thorpe, running for office, the issues that, in this case, a council member faces. But I'll tell you, our list, Maggie, that we're going to start running through here and threading in more successfully is really transcends many communities. And I want to talk to a politically sensitive issue, though, because Michael, you had posted on your Facebook page about an individual whose landlord didn't want him or her to place a political sign in the yard. Can you talk that a little bit and explain that?
I'd be happy to, Chris. So this friend's landlord stated that they were a staunch Republican.
Okay.
I'm, of course, running on a Democratic ticket. here's the reality. It doesn't matter on a local level. It
Right.
just doesn't. Your enthusiasm
Right.
for Carbon County is contagious. That's what counts.
Right.
So I think anybody that comes to the table and wants to try to be a part of the solution should be welcome. And I don't think that county or local politics is the place for division, partisanship. Leave that to the feds. We're here to try to make Carbon County, Jim Thorpe, our neighbors, stronger, great places to live, play, and work. And that's true.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
so can I put some words in your mouth? You're talking
Try.
what the person brings to the table is more important than necessarily how they registered as a voter.
Absolutely, positively.
Yeah.
And the reality is, as a Democrat, Jeffrey and I rarely vote straight ticket.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I want to put somebody in office to represent me, my town, and our best interest.
No.
Don't care anything else.
No, that's great. Because I always say, vote for the person who's best for you, your family, and your community. Again, I don't ask for votes. That's what I tell people. That's my mantra. Just find the right person, regardless of party. I think though where we fail as a community collectively is, we have 6,000 to 7,000 independents, non-affiliates, and that is just an untapped resource.
And they can't vote in the primary.
That's right, and they have little or no chance of being elected in the general election, which I think is a shame. We definitely lose some great potential there to make a difference in our communities. Guns. We got hold on. Before that, Maggie, let me take that question. Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, this question. Okay. So the question's by Kathy Rooney again. Michael, what are the top 3 things you'd like to do / change in Jim Thorpe?
I'd love to be able to tap the hopefully forthcoming infrastructure grants to work on Jim Thorpe sidewalks. Between that and perhaps ADA grants. Our sidewalks, as you know, are greatly deteriorated. In our borough, the sidewalks fall upon the steward of the homeowner. But again, like I mentioned, you can't go to old Aunt Edna, who's on a pension at 78 years old, and say you need to pay $6,000 for your sidewalks. And especially as a visitor's town, they're dangerous. They definitely hamper anybody with any kind of a disability. So that's definitely one thing. I really want to see an eye on preservation, but I want to be very careful how I say that, because people say, oh, is your home a national monument? No, and I don't want it to be, because I don't want the government telling me how to paint it, how to fix it, what light bulb to put in. But I do think that the borough needs to be respectful of our history, and the steps is a great example.
Yeah, I agree.
Steps is a terrific example. Everybody knows about the step issue on West Broadway. They're historic, they're beautiful, and they're closed. And for me, that's a challenge, because the neighbors use High Street for parking. And the visitors used to come and use them as a photo op. There's been weddings on them. And I think not taking care of some of our historic landmarks is a significant issue. That's 2. And you asked me about 3. 3 is definitely the parking and traffic scenario. And we are trying to work on it. And I know Chris has a lot of plans on his agenda. And there's no question, there's no ignoring that that's an important issue.
No, and we do have at least a blueprint for success, or a pathway ahead when it comes to parking, and specifically addressing some of the safety issues associated with it. We just need to come together, leverage that plan, take advantage of the infrastructure money that is forthcoming, and make a difference with that. Because I love the traffic study that was done. There are some really good components and elements that make sense, both at the county, because we have a stake in it with the county property, and of course the borough of Jim Thorpe. That is a great answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, Michael, I actually, you really hit a heartstring with me. I've actually told Chris many a time, I don't play the lottery, but if I did and I won, I would literally give all the money to just put in all the new sidewalks in town. Right. I'm a walker, and I end up walking on the street, because you can't walk on the pavements. Because if you're not like 100% focused on where you're walking, you are going to trip.
Yeah, and whether or not I do it as a council person or just a resident / JTTA, we've already started a very early conversation with Borough Manager Maureen Sterner, and we're on the same page on that.
All right,
Good.
So Maggie, we're going to jump into Second Amendment things because there's two different issues that are before Borough Council, and they're interrelated. Obviously, there is the firing of weapons. And again, I'm kind of minimizing when I say the firing of weapons because it's a lot more than that. But how do you define what has taken place up in Glen and Oco Estates, where there was an entire day of firing that was really disruptive to the individuals who live up there? And what's your position on the ability or the authority, the legality of individuals basically running a rifle range and I'm not sure if it's R1, R2. I can't recall how that is zoned up there.
I believe they're R1.
R1. So what are your thoughts on that? Because that is an issue for one segment of Jim Thorpe, which is what we refer to maybe as leisure land.
Right.
If we want to.
If you ask 5 people up there, you're going to get 7 answers.
No kidding.
That's the challenge. So, guns are sacred here.
Right.
And nobody's going to try to take them away. I also don't really want the government to come in and tell me what I can and can't do.
Yeah.
What I will say, though, is there's also our surrounding communities have nuisance ordinances, gun discharge ordinances that we don't have.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting that we go and pass laws for this. I think, to be honest with you, it's kind of a good neighbor thing.
Absolutely. Like most of the problems can be resolved by that.
Years ago, local policing used to, the APR would show up at your house and go, "You're being a knucklehead.
Right.
If we do this again, we're going to have an issue."
Yeah.
I just think a lot of it boils down to being good neighbors.
Yeah.
And if it were next to my house, I imagine I'd have an issue with it too.
Absolutely, I would.
And the reality is we do have options here.
Right.
There's gun clubs, there's the state range. And so it's not like there's nowhere else to go. Like I said, I'm still learning about it.
Yeah.
And I hear this and I hear that. And I'm just trying to put together my own opinion. But at the end of the day, you got to be a good neighbor.
Yeah. So let's jump real quick into the other 2A issue. Mr. Brandon Bell, with actually Dr. Val Finnell from the Gun Owners of America, joined Maggie and I last month, right? Maggie was here with us. We had a really good conversation, and I understand a request for some type of action by the borough was presented to them. So where do you stand on, the fact that he had this petition? Again, it was county centric, but he sought an ordinance resolution proclamation signed by Borough Council.
So as I've said, I don't think it's a local issue. I think this is an issue that's left to the feds and the state.
Yeah.
Let the Supreme Court argue out the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
Again, I got no intention of taking away anybody's guns. And unfortunately, I think that petition had some false information in it, stating that that the far left wanted to take away everybody's weapons. Well, that may or may not have. I mean, that may or may not be true. But the truth of the matter is, nobody that I know wants to take away people's weapons. Whether or not civilians should have high caliber weapons and automatic assault weapons, I got to tell you, law enforcement people I talk to, ex-military people I talk to, they say, yeah, especially law enforcement, they're like, we really don't want civilians having these items. But in terms of that resolution, my opinion very clearly was it's not a local issue. I think we have more important things to do, like sidewalks and traffic and parking. And I also think it's a slippery slope and a possible legal issue, because I think if you start picking and choosing the laws that you think apply to you or that you think you want to abide by or not abide by, I recognize, as I mentioned in my post, I recognize that this is a reaction to some of the states out west that are sanctuary cities for non-residents.
Illegal immigrants?
Well,
right. They're
changing that illegal immigrants. They're changing that word. Now, But
Yeah.
but the reality is,
Yeah.
two wrongs don't make a right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we have to be really, really careful when we pick and choose.
Okay.
I do get that the word resolution as opposed to ordinance
Right.
is intended
Mm-hmm.
to be a compromise.
Right. Yeah.
All right, maybe we can live with a compromise.
Right.
Personally, I think everybody should just, not everything that comes to you or
Right.
the borough council gets action. There
Right.
should be something we go, thank you, appreciate your participation, and
Well,
leave it at that.
Well, it is coming to the county government on the 29th.
Right.
Now, we have already met with Dr. Val Finnell. We asked him, provide us an expose. Tell us, what is this all about? It was information gathering for the Board of Commissioners. And I know Mr. Brandon Bell and Dr. Val will be at the Commissioners meeting next Thursday to make a formal petition. Hey, how many? Oh, I'm sorry. If you're just joining us, this is Carbon Matters live streaming. I'm Chris Lukasevich, Carbon County Commissioner, and this evening, my co-host Maggie is virtually joining us, and we have our special guest, Michael Rivkin, who is a candidate for Jim Thorpe Borough Council. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat. You can call 570-503-6780. That's my cell phone right here. And we'll try to get to your comments as best as we can as we move through this conversation. Michael, how many employees are there in the administrative office of the Borough of Jim Thorpe?
I don't have that answer for you.
Yeah, but I mean, you have Marine, and you seem to have a couple others, maybe.
Well, you've got Maureen, you've got utilities,
Right.
Borough Secretary,
Right.
Treasurer.
Right. So yeah, 4 or 5 maybe. Then that's probably my guess. I would say a handful. That building seems pretty spacious over there for 5 people. So, we've just been taxed as borough residents to renovate portion of Memorial Hall to create greater space for 5 administrative staff. Help me understand that, help the residents understand where you stand when it comes to the renovations that are taking place at Memorial Hall. And then we're going to transition to the maintenance facility that is proposed, both of these which are on hold. Now, I will clarify for our audience that when it comes to Memorial Hall, it's kind of multi-purpose use facility. Memorial Hall, as many of us recognize, as a place to come together and have events,
Right.
potential police office, and also a borough office. So what's your position on the taxation associated with this construction project?
I think anything we do has to be fiscally responsible.
Mm-hmm.
We have to figure out a way to pay for it. If we came up with a project in the JTTA, the goal would be to have that project pay for itself, like
Right.
transportation and parking.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work that way.
Right.
There's variables like bad weather, which means we didn't get parking,
Right.
people to use the parking.
Mm-hmm.
Now the situation that the borough is dealing with is this huge inflation in building materials, which virtually doubled their estimate.
Mm-hmm.
I think building materials went up 112% in
Yeah.
the past year.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that one of the primary needs is for police space.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding from the chief
Mm-hmm.
and other folks on the borough that I have spoken with is that our police station is woefully undersized
Mhm.
for segregation, holding, and general safety.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one issue that gets addressed without the borough hall, or excuse me, without the borough offices.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other, I would say though that, and Borough Hall is not that old now.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that old.
Yeah. What if?
And if they move the police out, then maybe that expansion will give space to what the borough offices
Yeah,
need.
that's right. What if we have too many police officers? I mean, are we right sized? Again, this is a legitimate question.
Especially this week.
Right. I mean, I can only go back to, growing up, where I knew the 4 or 5 cops, to today, and I'm just, again, this is really a rhetorical question. This
Sure.
isn't a question because unless there's a study done, how many police officers do you need a community of this size and stuff like that? But I wonder, are we building for a force that's too big? I've never seen so many police cars in my life in a small town. But again, that's just my perspective.
What do we have now? Nine
It's something
officers
around there. Yeah. And again, that might be the perfect size. I just don't know. And I haven't asked that question to the mayor or Joey, you know?
Boy, I don't know that either. But
Yeah.
what I do know is that a lot of the issues that our police force deals with now, we didn't have 20,
That's right.
30, 40 years
Absolutely.
ago.
Yeah.
Like it or not, we are a meeting point for drug
Yeah,
activity.
sure.
And sadly,
Yeah.
that does bring crime. We certainly see that in our surrounding neighborhoods.
Right.
And hopefully a vigilant police force
Yep.
in Jim Thorpe will keep that from happening
Yeah.
here.
And again, I would rather have more than not enough, again, I don't see them walking the streets enough. I'm going to tell you, I don't think our police officers walk the streets enough. I see them primarily, other than on festival weekends,
In their
I
cars.
see them in their cars. I'll be honest, I've never seen one walk on this side of town, only on Broadway.
Right. They are on Broadway.
Yeah.
You see them on
Yeah,
Broadway.
that's it. Hey, so the new maintenance garage, what's your thoughts on that kind of being up there on West Broadway? If I understand right, you don't even have natural gas that runs up there to the water company.
We're not sure why it didn't stay in town,
Yeah.
especially because there are some structures here on the east side
Uh-huh.
that could be accommodating to that. So I don't have that
Yeah.
answer. I think
Yeah.
sometimes in local government, commissioners,
Yeah.
council would
Yeah.
come up with pet projects.
Yeah, well, I had really hoped, and I pushed for this about 2.5 years ago, wasn't it, Maggie? I really wanted, when the
Mhm.
county was building their new maintenance garage, their storage, make sure I get that right. I'm a commissioner now, it's only storage, it's not maintenance. Right, you have
With
to
the
change-
portalet.
With the portalet, no running water. And I know you have a question, Maggie, I'm gonna turn to that.
Yeah.
I really wanted the county and borough to collaborate and see if we couldn't come to an arrangement and create a joint facility. And that was my lead into the Council of Governments question, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Maggie.
And I want to hold that thought.
Okay, go ahead.
Mhm. Do you have any idea how much, if any, revenue is received from citations?
Do I? So I can't speak for traffic violations. They did give a recap at last week's Borough Council meeting. What I can say is that with the new kiosk system, and you and I spoke
Yep.
about this, with the kiosk system, Maggie, parking violations are way, 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 way down. Yet parking revenue is up. Parking revenue is up for a couple of reasons. One, you and I may go and park on Broadway and pay for 2 hours, but we leave in an hour. So somebody comes in and pays for 2 hours and leaves in an hour. So you're getting double revenue. That's a really great thing. By not writing citations, you're also not aggravating your locals and your tourists.
Yeah.
That's another really great thing. We've all been to towns that people warned you when you're driving through some small town in the South. Don't go through here. You're going to get a speeding ticket.
Speed
You're
trap,
going to get a violation. We call it a tourism tax. That's no fun for anybody, and that's not a reputation we want.
Yep.
In terms of actual overall police enforcement, traffic enforcement, I do know that the mayor mentioned at the last meeting that he actually had a conversation where, certainly there's not a target, but you can't be out there for a shift and not see something.
Right, yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
so they should be
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
And so can I back up?
Yeah.
I want to back up. So Chris, you made a really great point a few minutes ago, and you talked about how you want to work with, you want the commissioners to work with Jim Thorpe Borough Council.
As an example.
I think it's a
Right, yeah.
great example because the reality is when I returned back 5 years ago, 5+ years ago, Borough Council didn't work with commissioners. JTTA didn't work with anybody. And that therein lies the problem. And so
Exactly.
now you can see we are trying to get people to work together.
Right.
The county and the borough, we host you in our town. You are the anchor business for the downtown. There is absolutely no reason why we don't have a relationship.
Right.
And it has improved, but there's definitely progress yet to be made.
Michael, are you familiar with the Council of Governments?
I am,
Right.
but not intimately.
All right.
Familiar with the title and the basis.
Okay, yeah, and again, it's communities coming together to share ideas, hopefully sharing resources. I mean, they have what's called a street zipper, which basically breaks up the macadam. They have a street sweeper, for
Right.
example, that they rent out. And again, what I will do, and again, I'm not going to have that conversation because, until you get into office, most people don't know what the COG is. And I will tell you, you go to most municipalities, and even though they have representatives, they really don't know what the COG is. But I'm going to provide you information on the Council of Government because it is an opportunity for all the communities to come together, municipalities, and share those best practices and to work together and collaborate. There's a lot of value in it, and I think it has a lot of opportunity. We just all have to be committed to positive change and willingness to kind of give and take a little bit. But I'm going to send you some information,
Please.
on that. I have to pay for it. All right. So you talked a little bit about the infrastructure. There are some American Rescue Plan funds coming to Jim Thorpe also. Again,
Right.
Details are still kind of coming on how we can truly spend that. But do you have any general thoughts based upon the initial guidance that came out in the act of how you as a borough council member would advocate to utilize those funds?
Well, one of the main things, like we talked about, is definitely to do the sidewalks.
Right.
There's no question
Mhm.
about that. Some of the borough lots, although
Yeah.
I understand they are going to be scheduled for paving, but there is maintenance needed on borough lots. There's maintenance needed on some of the stone walls with tree removal. And so it touches base on infrastructure and historic preservation.
Okay, well, if you're just joining us, and I will tell you, we've already reached the top of the hour, but I'm gonna look to my right here and ask Michael if he can continue with us for a little bit longer, because I think we got through about 5 of our things, Maggie, to be honest. So
I
if
was
Michael would
looking at
give
the
us
list.
the continued gift of his time a little bit longer, I'd be so appreciative
By
of
all
that,
means.
Michael.
By all means.
All right.
I appreciate being here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Short-term rentals, something that
Right,
impacts you.
that's what I want to hear about.
Okay, go ahead. Short-term rentals. Give us the down and dirty. And
I will gladly do that.
Yep.
So first and foremost, I get, shall we say, cards and letters saying, why do you hate short-term rentals?
Right.
And the answer is I don't. I
All right.
absolutely don't. Short-term rentals, and what we're defining right now is Airbnbs and VRBOs as opposed to a hotel or a bed and breakfast. The difference would be that a bed and breakfast has on-site management or owners and no cooking facilities for the guests. Hotel management 24 hours. Airbnb, VRBO, STR.
Yeah.
No on-site management or ownership required, and there are indeed cooking facilities for the guests. So about 4 years ago, Kurt Jackson came to me and said, Borough Council wants to ban short-term rentals. What are you going to do about it? And I went, that's not going to happen. That's the wrong answer.
Right.
You can't ban them. But having said that, you must have some oversight over them. And I'm so glad you asked that question because I had a conversation with a short-term rental owner on West Broadway last night. We had a phone conversation for about an hour talking about, and theirs is more of an upper end property, talking about why they're not booking the way they thought they would be booking. So one of the things that happens when you have untethered business is that you don't have a level playing field. So you've got, for example, several short-term rental owners out there that are not paying into the 3% tax, which I think is vital. They're not great neighbors.
Yep.
And hear me out, because many, many, many are. But what happens is then, if you're not paying insurance like you and I are, for example, you're not doing the proper maintenance and safety, your rates are low.
Right. Sure.
And when there's a surplus of these establishments, then the rate degradation, as it's called, affects everybody. And that's what this short-term rental owner is facing now. Their property is not getting the bookings they want because there's a plethora of lower priced options around there. Some are good, some aren't. And the other answer I was going to say is that I wanted to add is that many of the short-term rentals we have, these are owners that are committed to the community. They've come in, they've taken distressed properties, they've invested in the community. All I want is a good neighbor.
Right.
At the end of the day, I don't care what issue we're talking about. You got to be a good neighbor. It's a small town.
No, that goes to the gun shooting or
It's
to
all
just,
the same.
Parking. Maggie, go ahead, Mags.
I was going to ask Michael real quick. Can you just really quick? Are you pretty familiar with the areas that are where it's allowed to have it? Because they came out with the C1, C4. I don't even know where those areas are in town.
So predominantly where they're going to be prohibited from a new establishment is in the R1s. One of the major complaints that Jim Thorpe Borough was getting, be it the council or the mayor, was noise complaints in residential areas. These are folks that went and bought a suburban home out in the country, and now every weekend they have a stranger there. So they're not feeling safe. Having said that, if you're up, if you're running, if you're open, they're not going to, my understanding is they're going to leave you alone. If you're in that area, you're grandfathered in. You do still have to meet other aspects of the recently passed ordinance: parking, safety, contacts. And frankly, I'm real big on life safety. I'm mortified when I go into some of the buildings in our communities and no egress, no exit signs, no smoke alarms. And I know this is a big issue now. I think Lansford's talking about this.
Yes,
and,
just came up.
And the truth of the matter is, it also applies to short-term rentals.
Right. And I think that's appropriate, Maggie, right? That there should be, that health and safety issues really need to be across the board, for everyone, because it's all in our best interest. Did you have a follow-up, Maggie?
Yeah, I did. Where's R1 one?
R1 is leisure land.
Oh,
that's residential. That's highly leisure land.
Okay.
And then only certain districts over here on certain roads on the east side here are allowed. There's areas here that are also residential areas, and that ordinance is available on the Jim Thorpe Borough website. And Manager Sterner would be happy to send out a copy to anybody that requests it. She sent dozens and dozens and dozens out recently.
Not to correct you, Michael, but I know that there are some people who do Airbnb, but it's in their home and they are there at the time. So there are some actual, they consider themselves an Airbnb, but they're on site.
Absolutely, and that was the origin of the Airbnb. The whole reason why we haven't had any oversight or any management of it is because the way it started 14 or 15 years ago is, your dear old Aunt Edna was renting out the back bedroom.
Right.
The kids are at college, and who's going to argue with her to make a few extra dollars? But what's happened in the past decade is it's grown into an international business where we had one property owner here in Jim Thorpe that had more rooms than he had at Jim Thorpe. That's where it got out of hand.
Right.
Michael, what's the value of a library to a community? And I think, we have Dimmick Memorial Library. You live on Broadway, just down the street. Give me your thoughts on the value of a library.
Well, first of all, I'm going to be jaded here, Chris, because the architect that designed the Dolan House also designed the Dimmick Library. Libraries are, first of all, they have a great value, but they have a special value in a small town. And frankly, I think our library has tried really hard to adapt with online, and they were working virtually last year. So a library is a very, very important thing.
Yeah, I think they've done a great job with Kara is leading the effort for Dimmick Presents. I think that's been very good, kind of bringing in unique or special things about our community into the living rooms and stuff like that, be it businesses. I think she was just at the Asa Packer Mansion last week that we mentioned in our first half hour and stuff like that.
They host art shows there. They do community events. They've been partnering with other community libraries to share resources. No, libraries got to stay.
Okay. Well, just remember that when you're in the budget process as a borough council member, Jim Thorpe, the school district, significantly reduced their contributions to the Dimmick, and the Dimmick now has a branch, Penn Kidder branch to that. It was a significant hit. Well, there is the Dimmick Trust. Again, with that trust, you don't touch the principal. You're living off the interest only. So there's that constant need for fundraising, and there's that constant need of support from the municipality.
What worries me about losing something like our library is it's one more piece out of the puzzle. You lose a parade, you lose a fireworks event, you lose a library. Bit by bit, you start losing all those cool factors that make it a great place to live and work.
No, that's great. And, one of the challenges we have, and conflict of interest note, I am a board member on the Dimmick board. We haven't figured out how to monetize tourism. That has, and we've struggled with that, the brainstorming sessions as we developed our strategy, because if you look at the numbers, and they do a good job, the number of visitors who go in there,
Right.
obviously a lot of them are using the bathroom, but nonetheless, you're trying to figure out how do you monetize their visits, and that's a challenge, because again, you want to help support it. There is wear and tear associated with those visitors, but you do want to show it off, and you want to present it as another gem in Jim Thorpe and of Carbon County.
How about a porch summer concert series?
I mean,
yeah,
absolutely. Little things like that, and you could have a donation jar, right? Absolutely, a great idea. So the next board meeting, John McGuire, Carrie, I'm going to bring that up.
Right.
Credit goes right here for that idea. And matter of fact, talking about that, Ted Constance just reached out to me. We're going to have a meeting, I think, next Friday, right?
With Brad, yeah.
Yeah, Brad, right. We're going to have that meeting about trying to get it started back up down there in Josiah White Park.
Right.
So no, that's great. Go ahead, Megs, over to you.
Well, you brought up fireworks. Just a question was asked, are we having fireworks this year?
Boy, we brought it up. I did a Facebook ballot, if you will, survey on You Live in Jim Thorpe and the JTTA members page. And unfortunately, Maggie, I got very little support to move forward with it. I'm pretty passionate about it. I think that fireworks, and honestly, a July 4th parade, they're part of the fabric of a small town. I'm mortified we're not going to have them. I was very sad that we weren't. Obviously, nothing happened last year. I was sad we didn't gain any traction for it. I would love to see some group or groups step up to the plate and join forces, like the JTTA did with Sam Miller Field in 2019. And so we're not, I don't have anything on the radar for 2020, but do know that it's not something that is lost and forgotten.
Yeah, Maggie, interesting, as Michael alluded to or specified, we meet together, the borough, JTTA, Carbon Chamber, PMVB, and the county on a regular basis. And that is a notable absence in our activity and event list, which, we're tracking them throughout the remainder of the year. And I think that's a significant hole, mostly for this community being Jim Thorpe.
It is a community event. That's something that's not designed to bring tourists in. It's designed for us. Yeah, so I think that's a disappointment to see that it may not occur again this year. I will also tell you, when there's a vacuum gets filled. And again, we may not be in competition with our neighbors, but I'll tell you, there's a pretty good fireworks display just up the road, right? In Lehighton now, and that has increased in value. And I don't mind my neighborhood filling up with folks from anywhere for 4th of July fireworks. I really don't. I understand we got to keep it community, but at the same time, I embrace the fact of everyone, thousands coming together, over here at the high school for those activities. But now we'd burn or melt the rug if we were doing it over the high school now. Oh, right.
So it can't be
a turf fire.
Well, someone actually said if we did it off Flagstaff, you'd have Lehighton and Jim Thorpe, and actually probably even Nesquehoning would be able to see it.
Oh, you'd see it forever. Think about when we were in Northern Virginia, when we went to the top of our apartment complex in 99, I think it was, right? We could see fireworks all through probably 3 or 4 Northern Virginia counties and into Maryland, into DC, right? It was amazing. And those were miles and miles away.
Well, we'll see what happens with Flagstaff, because that's certainly, that may not be off the table depending the direction that the owners take, but that would be a great location.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great expectation of what could take place. Understanding, folks, so if you don't know, Flagstaff is not in Jim Thorpe, It really just, we always associate it with Jim Thorpe. Matter of fact, if you go right past Highlands or what used to be Queenies, you're in Mahoning Township, before you know it. Really just a couple 100 feet up the mansion house and stuff like that.
I think the township line is right there.
It really is. A matter of fact, PennDOT, they're doing, NEPA is doing a grant to repair more of the wall going up the mansion house. Came in front of me and it said Lehighton Township and Jim Thorpe. I called up the lady, the program manager. I said, "You're in the wrong township. One,
Right.
there's not a Lehighton Township. Two, it's a borough. And three, that's Mahoning Township is where that wall is. I could see it from basically from my office window, and stuff like
Right.
that." So,
There's
but
a comment by Jeffrey. He
Yep.
said the library concert series could be sponsored by local businesses, alleviating expense for the library and building better community cohesiveness.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think also there's a cost share possibility, right? The individuals who come and play, there's a cost share associated with it, 50-50, 60-40, whatever. So I think you could do it, quote unquote, on the cheap and just leverage individuals who want to enjoy those types of events or activities. Hey, Broadway doesn't have a physical polling location in that neighborhood, in that specific ward.
Marion Hose Bar.
Did you vote at Marion Hose Bar during the last election?
Not during COVID, but my
No?
I don't know, Chris, if it's
Wow.
coming back.
Well,
I believe it is.
Well, it is. I don't know if
Okay.
we'll come back to Marion Hose Bar, but it's interesting. I just want to bring that up because of
Right.
living on Broadway. We're up in the Dillies, up in the Diligence Fire Company up on the hill. But we will not bring it back until after the November general election, in order to not create confusion, potentially disenfranchise a few voters. Now, we know again, it's not a significant number, but we don't want to disenfranchise anyone. And we are looking at other options, and trust me, there aren't many downtown where we could have polling locations. I think there's general agreement, though, amongst some of us who are in the decision making there. Marion Hose Bar is a little too tight for it. People say, well, parking's a problem everywhere in downtown, so if you go to the Tolman House, for example, that's the one I would like to look at as an example, and work with Jim Thorpe Police to block off some spots on, voting days,
Right.
because that's good. It already has more or less handicap accessibility also, because it's at ground level, a couple inches. We put ramps there. But I just want to bring that up. We'd love to hear from you as a borough council member and a resident of locations that could potentially better help serve the community and its responsibility to be informed and involve citizens and vote. So again, a solicitation.
Sure, we sure look forward to having it back in
Yep.
town.
Yeah, really. No, and again, and we want to get it there. And I know we will. It'll just be the next year's primary prior to that. So I was talking about periphery items. You hit on one, Flagstaff. You think Jim Thorpe. It's not. You think Glenanoka. You think Glenanoka, as we say, right? You think Jim Thorpe. It's not. You think Jim Mock-Chunk Lake Park. Well, only about half of it partially is. But those are areas also where a certain level of responsibility or understanding of those areas is important to you as a borough council member. So I'm going to bring up Mock-Chunk Lake Park because it's an area in which I'm a strong advocate for ensuring that is the recreational location of choice for county residents and guests who act responsibly like we all should. Could you envision anything that could help realize my vision for Mock-Chunk Lake Park as being the recreation location of choice for Jim Thorpe residents?
Well, first, I think it's really important to know, and I'm not trying to score points here, but many of us believe that Mock-Chunk Lake Park is something that the county does best.
Okay.
So the park has a really great reputation.
Yep.
People enjoy going down there. I'm not sure to what level the food and beverage is, the picnic grounds or whatnot, but it seems to me that there's potential there to capitalize on that.
Okay.
I have to be honest, I often look at something with a view that, okay, to your point,
Yeah.
how do we monetize this?
Yeah.
How do we make it pay for itself?
Right.
And then maybe a little bit extra.
Right. Well, a good thing I would say is we do have a new food vendor. We contract out the camp store and the concession store.
Right.
And we do have a new vendor. So I think there's good opportunities to advance that. Now, again, that's not going to be additional revenue for the county because we have a fixed price, contract price. But I think it's going to be a really good year for the new contractor out there.
And the boat rentals are very great.
Oh, they do great. She does great out there. And I hope she continues to want to run that because she does. Maggie and I were out last summer we were out, Mags?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it was great out there. And they did a great job hosting us and getting us set out to go ahead and do that. Just so you may be aware that, the county park is all the switchback also.
Right.
The county owns, you come down Pisgah, you come up onto what I call the movie house, that's all county property, which most people don't realize. Mock Chunk Lake Park is extensive. And just so you know, I have a plan for expanding Mock Chunk Lake Park. We're talking about ag land preservation and preserving open space.
What more can we do for our seniors and youth?
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's always something that comes up about youth and seniors. Is there something that the borough can do to better engage with the youth? I'm always about, eventually getting them to come back to Jim Thorpe. Seniors, again, it's about opportunities. We don't have bingo in Jim Thorpe anymore, do we? I don't think so.
One of the issues that we had over the winter, it was a really great issue that was raised at Borough Council meetings, and that is, why do we not have some of our high school age kids shoveling walkways? And that's something that you can do for seniors. That's just a tip of the iceberg. But to preserve, we talked a few times tonight about preserving the heritage, the importance of our old residents, our old chunkers. And so to have that may be a bingo or things like that. That could be, well, they used to do it up at Memorial Hall.
Of course.
In Memorial Hall, yeah.
And it was a big money raiser for the hosts of that. Was there a question, Maggie?
Well, someone had made that comment about, they'd like to see bingo coming back to Memorial Hall and skating, but I think skating's out because of the police.
Right.
They're taking over that area.
Right. Yeah. Down in
down below
the basement. So I'm going to finish up just with two quick questions. I know Kathy had asked Michael about, kind of the top three things he would like to address. So does that coincide with your top three issues that you see the community has, or would you look differently if I said, what are the top three issues that you expect you'll need to confront as a borough council member?
Well, one of the issues is definitely transparency.
Yeah,
I have to say that, and not all the residents feel that they're getting a clear view of what's going on. How's that? I think that's really important right there. I want to absolutely remain focused on having tourists pay for tourist services. That to me is insanely important. You just can't charge your locals. And like I said, preservation, and you mentioned wildlife space. Yeah, that's all why people come here. And if we don't take care of it, they'll stop coming. And to that point, there are many towns around us, Pittston and Milford and even Pottsville. Yeah, and their mottos are "Get Jim Thorpe." Yeah, they want what Jim Thorpe has. And to your point, that void will be filled if we don't manage it.
Michael, you said transparency, and it's near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to ask you, well, what would be steps you would take to make borough government more transparent?
Well, without overly, overtly criticizing it right now, we talked earlier, you can't always hear what's being said. Sure. To me, that's the main thing. Yeah. That's major. If, we're blessed that we have residents that come to these meetings and voice their opinions, good, bad, and ugly, but they're there. So many towns that we've lived in, nobody cares. Yeah. They've given up. Yeah. And if we don't want them to give up. Yeah. We may not agree with everything that they say. I don't agree with everything you say. You don't agree with everything I say, but I want to hear it.
Right.
And I want them to hear it
Yeah.
too.
Well, I'd like them to be able to see it too.
Right.
And,
Well,
and there's individuals who can't make it because they're just coming home from a hard day's work down in the Lehigh Valley or up in Humboldt. And I continue to be taken aback by the resistance, the reluctance, or the failure to incorporate technology to bring borough council into the living rooms who are willing.
our meetings should
Yep.
be live streamed.
Absolutely.
Our borough should have a Facebook page.
Yep.
You can block comments on it,
Yep.
but it should be informative. We're plowing the streets.
Yep.
Don't park.
Yep.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And we don't have that either.
Yeah.
We sort of treat social media like a pariah.
Right.
And I don't love everything about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, it is now the information
Yep.
source.
Yep.
It just is.
Yeah.
And if we don't respect that and use it, why we're missing the boat.
Yeah. No, that's great. Maggie, I'm going to give you one last chance. Any alibis?
There's one Carbon County Comprehensive Plan, local representative recognized a number of critical areas that need protection, such as ridge lines.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed, that was a part of my argument why I was so steadfastly against wind turbines in Carbon County, because of how, to me, and again, I'm a big proponent of energy independence and a balanced portfolio of energy options, but wind turbines in Carbon County, I think, is 180 degrees contrary to the Carbon County Comprehensive Plan and how that will impact the natural beauty of
the
this
ridge line.
area and stuff like that. I agree. I remember, I don't think the county commissioners at that time necessarily agreed with my position on that, but neither here nor there. I think we're blessed with the beautiful ridge lines we have, and we should do all we can to protect them. You know, again, it's finding that balance between development and quality of life and economic.
I want to make a comment, and I know it's not going to be popular. Since I mean, Chris is obviously a local. He was, raised here in Jim Thorpe. I'm not. So I'm in a very awkward position of being in a town where there's a very defined, town people who were, born and raised there, and other people who have transplanted, because it's a beautiful place. It's a wonderful place to live. But there's definitely a separation. Michael, I believe that those people, the people who have come from other places to our town, are not being represented on this borough council. And I think that you would provide a great service in representing more of the demographic of Jim Thorpe, and especially the part that has not been not had a voice, really. And I love that you are bringing a perspective of the townspeople, not in opposition to the borough, but let's work together in that manner, of coming. Let's come to a meeting place here, and it's not us against them kind of thing. And I think you're doing a very brave and wonderful thing. I am all for you. You have my vote. And I just tell you, just keep your chin up, keep working hard. I mean, I'm just hoping and praying that even the townspeople that are native of Jim Thorpe will see the value of having you on the borough council.
Well, they're important too. And any government, I don't care if we're talking borough, county, state, federal, it is supposed to represent the faces of the people that they are serving.
Mhm.
All right.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie. That's a great way to finish up with advocacy for Michael Rivkin, who is a candidate for Jim Thorpe Borough Council. We want to thank Michael for joining us. We want to especially thank also, of course, those who hung in here about 35-40 minutes before our normal end time. But again, the subjects were important. The opportunity for Michael to engage and have that conversation, I think, was sufficiently important to provide the valuable gift of our time, just like he's provided us the valuable gift of his time, his insight. We wish him the best of luck coming next month for the primary election. We hope to see him in the general election, of course, also. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a million.
Appreciate it. A pleasure.
Appreciate your